So the interview transcript of Pam Bondi before the House Oversight Committee was released yesterday. It's 111 pages. I went through each and every page. The cover-up is worse than you can even imagine. I want to go through with you the entire 111 pages. I'll do it in an abbreviated form together, but it's really important that we read the words of Bondi, read the words of the DOJ lawyer who was in the room with her, hear and take a look at the questions that were being asked of Bondi by Democrats in the House Oversight Committee, by the lawyers in the House Oversight Committee, so you can see the extent of the cover-up taking place. Just to quickly remind you, Pam Bondi was subpoenaed by the House Oversight Committee, where she had to show up and testify under oath. She refused to testify under oath. Instead, she cut a deal with James Comer, a MAGA Republican who heads the House Oversight Committee, to convert the subpoena of Bondi into a, quote, voluntary interview where there would not be any video camera taping her and where she would not be under oath. Instead, there would just be a transcribed interview. Also, she was present with a top Department of Justice lawyer, the number 2 or number 3 at the DOJ, somebody named Harmeet Dillon, who was there, who kept on objecting to the questions being asked by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee and refusing to have Pam Bondi answer very basic questions. And then so Pam Bondi would follow the lead of that DOJ lawyer and refuse to answer very basic questions. So when I read this 111-page transcript, Pam Bondi refused to answer any questions about her communications with Donald Trump or anybody in the executive branch. She claims those are executive privilege communications, so she won't talk about any communications with Donald Trump whatsoever. And I'll show you, it's on the most sensitive aspects of the cover-up of the Epstein files. It is on the crux of everything, so we'll go through that. In addition, Pam Bondi, through the DOJ lawyer, refused to answer any questions that predate Pam Bondi's time as Attorney General. So if Pam Bondi knew about Donald Trump's relationships and connections with Epstein before she was AG, for example, if Donald Trump told her during the campaign in 2024, hey, I need you to cover this up for me if I win. She refused to answer those questions and said, the time limitation for this deposition starts when I become the Attorney General. So there's a time limitation when I'm AG, and I won't answer any questions before that. Then I won't answer any questions about communications with Donald Trump or anybody in the executive branch. And then where it didn't fall into those categories, Pam Bondi would just say, I don't recall on the most critical issues. So when Pam Bondi was asked, did you specifically try to flag Donald Trump's name in the Epstein files to segregate and destroy documents that have Donald Trump's name on it, right? A pretty big deal where you would think one would recall if you were intentionally destroying Epstein files with Trump's name on it, right? We all agree, big deal. This isn't a partisan thing, Democrat, Republican, Independent. She says, I don't recall whether I ordered people to destroy documents, videos, photos with Donald Trump on it. I just don't recall if we were looking for Trump's name specifically to flag those documents, videos, and photos to destroy him. I don't recall. This is why, though, the exercise we're about to go through together is important. Because when you watch news programs and you see the debates back and forth, there's a lot of yelling and a lot of hyperbolic language. But it's like, for me, and maybe you feel the same, it's like, look, can you just go through the document with me so I can see for myself and verify that what you're telling me is the truth? And then let me form my opinions once you explain to me and show me the document, the transcript, the photos, the videos. Show it to me, Ben. Show it to me, whoever, right? That's what we're going to do. So let's take a look at the transcript. You see right here, Friday, May 29th, 2026. The interview in the above matter was held at the Rayburn House Office Building at 9:05 a.m. You had Representatives Comer, Garcia, Khanna, Stansberry, Frost, Lee, Subramaniam, Ansari, Min, and Walkinshaw. There you see interview of Pam Bondi. It should be deposition of Pam Bondi, but they made it into just a interview. And so that's what we're going to be going through. I want to jump ahead, then we'll go back, but I want to jump ahead to the meat of it right here. So let's go to page 44, 43. And over here on page 43 and 44, we start seeing these objections being raised by this DOJ lawyer and Pam Bondi refusing to answer questions. So the lawyer for the minority, for the House Dems, starts asking these questions. And the DOJ lawyer is Harmeet Dillon. Miss Dillon says the following. Because we want clear testimony coming from the Department of Justice concerning what any witness from the Department of Justice, and that is the basis on which the witness is here concerning her tenure as Attorney General, and so that's the scope that we've agreed to today. The witness is perfect. Then the lawyer goes, the witness is perfectly capable, it sounds like, of saying she's not sure if she's not sure. So I'm not following why that would be some kind of insurmountable problem. And then Harmeet Dillon says, you're not going to dictate the objections that I make, but you can ask your questions and I will instruct the witness to answer or not accordingly, because she is here on behalf of the United States Department of Justice because her testimony is concerning that time. Question. Yeah, it's kind of a non sequitur, but yes, I agree, but I'm going to set up the way that this is reflected on the record just so we get that clarified. So Miss Bondi, with respect to Exhibit B, I just provided, and if you don't mind, it sounds like if you could get a little closer to the microphone, there's been some problems. So with respect to Exhibit B, who are the 10 individual co-conspirators of Mr. Epstein reflected in this 2019 email? Who are the co-conspirators, right? That's a big question that we would want answered from Bondi, right? Who are the 10 co-conspirators of Epstein? You know it. You're hiding it. These names are redacted. Tell us. The DOJ lawyer says, Miss Dillon says, she's not going to answer that. Then the lawyer for the Dems says, Miss Bondi, are you refusing to answer that question? Miss Bondi, may I have a moment to confer? Then they go off the record. And then Bondi goes, I don't recall ever reviewing that document, so I don't know who's in it. And that came from the FBI, New York. I just don't recall. They go from instruct not to answer to I don't recall. Let's go to page 46. Question. What is your understanding of the extent to which President Trump was aware of Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell's crimes prior to the crimes becoming public? So when nobody else, answer from Bondi, I'm not certain of the extent of his knowledge. Question, okay, during your tenure, did President Trump direct you or any of your subordinates to take any official action related to Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell? A very basic question. Did Trump direct you, Bondi, or anyone who works for you, Bondi, to take any action related to Epstein or Maxwell? Right? That's one of the main questions we all want to know. Answer from Bondi. I'm not going to discuss any conversations that I've had with the President of the United States. Question. It would be helpful for us just to understand whether that's just a refusal to discuss full stop or whether that's an invocation of some version of executive privilege. Answer. Privilege. Question. And can you or counsel elaborate a little bit on the nature of the privilege for the record? Then the DOJ lawyer, Harmeet Dillon, says, we're not going to get into any conversations that the former Attorney General had with other senior members of the executive, members of the White House, and the immediate staff of the president. That's covered by privilege. Then another lawyer at the DOJ says, I'll also add, we don't need to formally assert the privilege in this context, given the voluntary nature of these proceedings. So we're just going to refuse to provide answers about conversations with the president or his advisors. Just think about the arrogance there. Because this is voluntary and it's not an under oath deposition. Well, it should be an under oath deposition with a video camera. And then the lawyers for Bondi say, we don't even have to tell you why we're not going to answer questions about whether Donald Trump directed you, Bondi, or your subordinates to cover up the Epstein files. We don't have to give any answer. We're just going to say we don't answer. Again, I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm reading you what's in the transcript right here. Then Harmeet Dillon goes on to say, this is a voluntary interview and assertion of privilege is not legally required. And so just telling you what's out of bounds, you're not going to get answers on those issues. Then the lawyer for the Democrat says, it's just a choice not to answer that question, correct? Harmeet Dillon, I'm not testifying here, so I'd say, I think you can go ahead and just ask your next question. Then the lawyer for the Dems says, well, we'll just clarify with the witness, thank you. That's a great point. Question. That's just a choice on the witness's part to simply not answer questions in the category you describe, which is conversations with the president or his close advisors. Is that correct? Answer. And I've said that in the past on multiple range of topics, but that's the case today. Answer. Yes. We go to page 48. Question. Did President Trump ever tell you that he had friends who could be exposed as abusers by the Epstein files being released? Bondi's answer. I'm not going to discuss any conversations that I've had with the president on any matter. Question. There may be time, I'll try to minimize it, but there may be times where it's appropriate for you to say that again for the record, and I appreciate your patience. I'd like to discuss some chronological events, starting with President Trump's 2024 campaign. During that campaign, then candidate Trump promised to release the Epstein files. Did you speak with then candidate Trump or any of his advisors about Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell during the 2024 presidential campaign? Answer. Not to my knowledge, but again, he wasn't president. Then the lawyer for the DOJ, Harmeet Dillon, says, it's beyond the scope of this interview. Then Pam Bondi goes, and yeah, it's beyond the scope. You see how she's being coached by the DOJ lawyer to not answer any questions before 2024. Then after 2024, every objection is made on executive privilege. And then they go, you know what? This is an involuntary interview, so we don't even need to tell you what the basis of our objection is either. Let's keep on reading. The next question is, I'll redo the question. It's whether during the 2024 presidential campaigns, whether you, Miss Bondi, had any conversations with then candidate Trump or his advisors about Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell. DOJ lawyer Harmeet Dillon says, and to repeat, the witness is here voluntarily to talk about her time as Attorney General, and that is an overarching limitation so that we cannot be here all day. And those are the ground rules that we agreed to when we came here. So that is our limitation. Your question goes beyond that. I'm just noting that for the witness. Democratic lawyer, just to be clear for the record, we never agreed to that or were informed of that. DOJ lawyer Harmeet Dillon, fine. Democrat lawyer, and separately, it would be helpful for me to understand with the question relating to candidate Trump, is that still part of the previously described concern of not discussing conversations with Donald Trump or President Trump? In other words, is it no conversations with him at any time, whether or not he was in office? The DOJ lawyer Harmeet Dillon says this is a separate limitation regarding a temporal limitation, which has previously been articulated to you. Her testimony here today is limited to what she said or did during the time as the Attorney General. And then it goes on to say, and then Harmeet Dillon, the DOJ lawyer, says, you seem determined to eat up all your time repeating yourself. That's your choice. But she's going to stick to the limits that have been articulated. this is my commentary here, the limitations that you just made up, that she's refusing to answer questions before 2024 or 2024 or before, and then after she refuses to answer any questions about communications with Donald Trump. Do you all see why they did not want this under oath and why they did not want this on video camera? Could you imagine how bad Bondi looked and all of these DOJ cover-uppers looked when this was going on? Like, can you imagine this is why they're hiding this from us. That's why I'm doing the tedious task of going through this transcript with us, because we need to see what's happening right here. Question. So when President Trump was a candidate during the 2024 presidential campaign, did you have any discussions with him or his close advisors about Epstein or Maxwell? Harmeet Dillon. It's beyond the scope, so. Pam Bondi. It's beyond the scope, so. I was subpoenaed as Attorney General or asked to come in as Attorney General. Okay, I don't want to lose all day, but in what sense do you view it as a witness as beyond the scope? I was not the Attorney General at the time, Bondi says. Question. Okay. You were sworn in as Attorney General February 5th of last year. When was your first conversation with President Trump about the Epstein investigation? Answer. I don't discuss any conversations, whether I've had them or not had them, with the President of the United States. Okay, wasn't that page so revealing there? I'm not going to answer anything before 2024 or 2024 or before. Question. Okay, so when was the first conversation you had with Donald Trump after 2024? I'm not going to answer that, whether I had a conversation or not. Okay, then what's the point of any of this? What's the point of any of this when this is your behavior? And again, I don't care what political party you're from or no political party. This should make you livid. Because it's making me livid. This should make everybody livid. Page 51. Question. The Wall Street Journal has reported that you told President Trump last May he was in the Epstein files and that the Department of Justice did not plan to release any more Epstein files. Deputy Attorney General Blanche was also reportedly in that meeting. What did President Trump say when you told him he was in the files? Answer. I won't discuss any conversation that I had or did not have with the President of the United States. Page 54. The month prior in June, Elon Musk had tweeted that, quote, time to drop the really big bomb. Real Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, and that's the real reason they have not been made public. Did you, Pam Bondi, have any conversation with any agency or administration staff about that tweet? Answer. I'm not going to discuss any conversation that I had within the department or the administration. Okay, so not only are you not going to discuss any conversations you had with Trump, you're not going to discuss any conversations you had with anybody. Okay, the time limitation before 2024, not discussing it. 2025 and after, not discussing it because I'm not discussing my communications, because I'm just here for a voluntary interview. I'm not here under a subpoena. You are here under a subpoena. Just because James Comer converted this to an involuntary interview, now do you see how these people take advantage of this? I mean, it's ridiculous. Another question. Okay, another Elon Musk tweet. Mr. Musk said, it's time to drop the really big bomb. The question was just whether you had any conversation with subordinates, colleagues about the tweet. DOJ lawyer Harmeet Dillon. The question calls for communication that she's already said she's not going to testify about. And she's already answered that. So then the Democratic lawyer says, I definitely don't think it does, but can you help me understand in what sense? In other words, it's not a conversation with the president. It's during her time as Attorney General. So why aren't you answering? We're just not answering the question. Then you had Democratic Congress members start asking questions like Democratic Congress member Garcia. Here was his question, page 56. Ms. Bondi, thank you for being here again and again. We just want to reiterate we wish you a full speedy recovery. Thank you for being here. Ms. Bondi, a couple of questions. I want to start first. There's been reporting that indicates that you informed Trump in May 2025 that his name appeared multiple times in the Epstein files that were reviewed by the DOJ. A couple of months later, on July 7th of 2025, which was discussed earlier, the DOJ and FBI released a memo saying that no no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. We just discussed that. Now, looking at the conversation that was reported back in May, why did you tell President Trump he was in the files? Ms. Bondi, answer. I'm not going to discuss any conversation I did or did not have with the President of the United States, and I've said that multiple times on multiple topics throughout my tenure. Congressman Garcia, what was President Trump's reaction when you had that conversation with him? No response? Then the DOJ lawyer says, asked and answered. Then Garcia says, did President Trump at any time tell you not to disclose that he was in the file? DOJ lawyer Harmeet Dillon, asked and answered. Asked and answered meaning we're not answering the question that you're asking. We're just going to say we're not answering it just because. And again, they think because they're not on video and they're not under oath and they release the transcript later that they just get away with it. That's their plan behind all of this. Then Garcia goes, okay, can we talk about Ghislaine Maxwell? It's clear that you're not answering any questions about Donald Trump, about any conversation with President Trump, what he may have directed you to do. Is that correct? Bondi, I'm not going to answer any questions that I've had with the president, whether we had them or didn't have them or the substance. Congressmember Garcia. So let's look at the handling of Ghislaine Maxwell. Obviously a convicted sex trafficker. She was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. You earlier today called her evil. We can agree on that. I wonder, just to clarify, Ms. Bondi, do you think Ms. Maxwell deserves a pardon for her crimes? No. Garcia, but will you acknowledge that she was moved to a less secure facility? Bondi, no. I have no knowledge of that. You have no knowledge that she was sent to a less secure facility? Everybody knows that. You know that. I know that. You, as the Attorney General, didn't know that she was sent to a less secure facility? Here's what Bondi said. Look at line 20. No, because I have no knowledge of that. Garcia, okay. I do want to make sure we get that exhibit out, but that is the case. She was moved to a less secure facility. Did you know if Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche ordered the move to the less secure facility? Bondi, I have no knowledge of that. Garcia, did you ever ask anyone to move Ghislaine Maxwell to a different prison? Bondi, as I stated earlier, I knew she was moved when I read it, I guess online, or I saw it. Garcia, okay. Did you talk to Acting Attorney General Blanche after you read it online? Dillon, on any topic? Garcia, on the actual move, Ghislaine Maxwell to the less secure facility. Bondi, I don't recall. I would direct that to the Bureau of Prisons. I don't recall. You don't recall if you spoke to Todd Blanche about Ghislaine Maxwell? Again, that's where they go when there's no, now they just go, I don't recall critical facts. Okay. I think obviously the move Ghislaine Maxwell to less secure facility was everywhere, was like being discussed in the news, a massive obvious move that the Bureau of Prison ended up making, under whose direction we still have yet to have an answer on. Garcia, perhaps the question also should be directed to the Bureau of Prisons and Todd Blanche. Answer, yes. Then you had Maxwell Frost. He asked his questions. Okay. She goes, back to Ghislaine Maxwell, because you're not going to answer on Trump. Are you aware if President Trump was informed about the transfer before it happened? Bondi, I'm not going to discuss any conversations that I've had or did not have with the President of the United States on this topic or others. Maxwell Frost. Yes, I understand that, but it's not about a conversation that you might have had with him. My question is, are you aware if he knew about it? Bondi, I'm not going to discuss any conversations that I've had or didn't have with the President of the United States. Ms. Dillon, so if members are chewing up their time repeating themselves, that's not our problem. Pam Bondi, and I'm not aware of the president having any knowledge of it, whether it be from reading it in the paper or people reporting that he did or didn't talk to anyone about it. I have no knowledge. Maxwell Frost, okay. Did anyone in the administration ever express concern about the transfer or urge the Bureau of Prisons to reverse it? Bondi, I'm not going to discuss any conversations that I had or didn't have with the administration. Then we have Congressmember Subramanian, who says, right, were you looking at anything in particular in the files? No, Subramanian. And there's rumors of an effort potentially to look through the files for President Trump's name in particular. Are you aware of any sort of effort at the department or anywhere else in the administration doing that? Bondi, I'm not going to discuss anything within the department or discuss what did or didn't take place. How about that objection? I'm not going to discuss anything within the department. So again, you're not discussing anything that predates your time as the Attorney General. And then now you're saying you will not discuss anything within the department. So what is the point of any of this? And for Bondi and Trump and MAGA, they go high five. This is what we wanted. She's not answering any questions. We just did a written transcript. The American people are going to forget about it. The American people aren't going to forget about it. That's why you and I are taking this tedious detour, going through this line by line so we can see what's actually happening here. Bondi, I'm not going to discuss anything within the department. Subramanian, I'm asking about your knowledge of any sort of effort to do that, not any discussion about what happened. Bondi, I'm not going to discuss any conversation that did or did not happen regarding that. Subramanian, I'm not asking for any questions. Answer, I'm not responding. Okay. Subramanian says, but what I'm asking though is before the release of the files, during the process of releasing the Epstein files, was there any effort to look through for President Trump's name or any administration official's name before the release of the files? Bondi's answer, I don't recall. Subramanian, and are you aware of any effort to do that? You don't recall? Bondi, I don't recall. Okay. Subramanian, it's not about what's in the files. I'm asking any effort to look for President Trump or any other administration official's name in the files up to the release of the files and in the process of releasing him. Was there an effort to find Donald Trump's name in there? Bondi, I don't recall. Subramanian, Congress member, goes, you don't recall? Okay. Well, there you have it, folks. I can keep going on, but I think you get the point here. I'll mention this just so you can see how it was that the DOJ lawyer introduced herself, so you can just see for yourself, like in what capacity. Harmeet Dillon says, I'm Harmeet Dillon, the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, and I'm here on behalf of the United States Department of Justice as the former Attorney General was subpoenaed and is appearing here voluntarily in her official capacity. And accordingly, I am here to represent the interests of the DOJ and its interests in effectuating the Transparency Act, and solely to be here on behalf of the DOJ. So they viewed this as furthering the Transparency Act. I'll let you be the judge after I just read through the transcript. We spent a half hour doing this together. If this is furthering the interest of the Transparency Act, if this is furthering the interests of the survivors, or if this is inflicting more PTSD on the survivors, and if this is more of the cover-up. You decide. Hit subscribe. This is what we do here on the MeidasTouch Network. That wasn't an easy task we just did. That was tedious, right? That was work. This is what we do. This is what I teach my associates when I was a lawyer. This is what I teach my law students when I'm a professor at USC. We go through it line by line together. We struggle with it. We grapple with it, but we understand what's happening. Knowledge is power, that we have to get at the truth. And that's what we're doing by reading these transcripts together, even if it took us 30 minutes to do. It's important. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Be sure to add the MeidasTouch podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new updates every single day.